Diddy case. What are your thoughts? We've got some information from today. Is this a sham trial? Like, are they actually going to get him on anything? Because it seems like they have nothing, like, other than basically him having a pretty degenerate bedroom relationship with this girl. I've yet to hear him breaking any laws like racketeering, like they said, or trafficking, like they said. They've not made that case at all.
How long are they expecting this trial to last? Because they said Cassie's this star witness, but it seems like they called her kind of early. To me, it seems like they're getting the shocking kind of emotional heartstring stuff out of the way, and then you'll build to the more technical, boring case. If I were the prosecution, I wouldn't want to lead with, like, here are the tax documents and here's the evidence of the payments and stuff like that, because you'll lose the jury. They'll get bored. You want to lead with the more emotional stuff. And that's not to cheapen, like, what she's talking about. Obviously, there's a lot of, like, really intense subjects going on. But if you're structuring your case, you want the shock and awe first. So then later, when you're having to do the more technical analysis, people are already bought in.
Some lawyers mentioned that. They said basically most juries, 50% of the jury, Good Logic is a lawyer. He's there covering the case. And he said basically 50% of juries make up their minds at opening statements. Mm-hmm. And they've certainly done a good job establishing that Diddy is a piece of garbage. Mm-hmm. Like, they've definitely done that. That's not
what they need to prove. They need to prove racketeering, and they need to prove trafficking, and they need to prove it without a reasonable doubt. So far, a lot of people are looking at these opening arguments, and they're like, okay, yeah, he's pervy, yeah, he's forceful, but just because he hired adult stars in states that he was freaking off in doesn't make that, international trafficking.
That's my issue. It's like everything we've heard now. So to Hannah Claire's point, it could be like, hey, let's make sure the jury hates him, and then we'll get to the boring stuff.
Yeah.
But to Luke's point, I'm like, so the guy was a deviant. So is all of Hollywood. And so, like, I'm just feeling eerily familiar to the Epstein stuff for me. What do you think, Ian? You think we're going to get it? Like, they were saying that half of Hollywood was taking part in these freak-offs. We have not got one name in 2 days, other than his girlfriend, whom, at least in my opinion, was willingly, actively participating in these things for at least some period of time. They had an abusive relationship. You could make that argument that she wanted out, but she certainly was into it for some period of time.
Is there evidence of malfeasance? Is there camera footage?
Yes.
Well, there is the only camera footage. Well, no, actually, they're watching the freak-off videos today in court, allegedly. But if the freak-off video is just Diddy paying a hooker to plow his wife, I don't really care about that. Like,
and to do other things that were very weird. I mean, they got into some nitty-gritty details. We have
one of them was treating her mouth like a urinal. But again, that's bedroom degeneracy. That's not against the law. There is the big video, Ian, of him beating her up in the International Hotel. But again, that's yet another thing that he's not on trial for. They showed that at the trial to make sure everyone hated him, but it's not him. The only
connection to that is that she said she was fleeing a freak off in that hotel.
But so, she can't prove that.
I think it comes back down to, like, where in the case do we think we are? Is this case supposed to last 4 days, or is it going to last a month? If they have probably more time, I think the argument, and I'm not saying this for sure, but I bet the prosecution is going to make this argument, like, if Diddy is willing to treat someone he allegedly loved or was in a relationship like that, think about all of the people who he didn't care about, the way he would treat them and what would happen. And then again, weave in the more technical, boring details. The problem is, like, yes, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but like you have said, juries are emotional by nature. Like, some of them might be like, well, he's a horrible guy, but I can't see, based on these payment histories, any signs of whatever. But most of them will be like, this is awful, and it was horrible to watch the videos. And the defense is trying really hard to prevent any kind of they're trying to prevent any sympathy for the prosecution. One of the things that I remember from the other day, Cassie is like 8 or 9 months.
I know, how convenient.
She's intensely pregnant, and so the defense wanted to seat her in the witness box before the jury was let in, so she becomes not as sympathetic of a character, you know, like if you're having to have this crying pregnant woman talk about her abusive ex relationship, you know, there's no way the jury's not going to have some kind of empathy for that, even though it's maybe not exactly proof of the crime he's charged with.
Yeah, I mean, some of the details were that she was she had sores inside of her mouth from giving so much oral, and she had like constant UTIs and all this kind of stuff. But again, like, that's bad, but that's not what he's in court for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's not on trial for being, for being an abusive boyfriend or a weirdo. Like, he's on trial for trafficking and racketeering, and like, he's up on his own. He's one man. They got him up on RICO charges. They better have, like you said, they better have. Okay, something. Now that you know he's a piece of ish, here's where he had this international like hookup network of people you know what I mean? Like, they have presented none of that in day 3, and they said the trial's only taking 2 weeks. So, I mean, I don't know. I just, it doesn't. I don't think they're getting him on anything. Like, he's going to get like a light sentence or a time served thing for prostitution. I mean, the prostitution stuff's undeniable. But you know, the other stuff, like even the prostitutes he hired have testified against him. So, I mean, what's a standard sentence for a first-time offender for that? It's not life in prison.
If he gets, sentenced to time served on a lesser charge, what happens to him afterwards? I mean, obviously, all of Hollywood is going to treat him, I would assume, differently, at least publicly, than they did before. There's sort of no coming back from that. Although we don't know what happens behind closed doors. I'm sure there are some people who remain loyal to him privately.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ian, what do you think? Like, I mean, I think the video, by the way, the DOJ released the video today, unedited, a 15-minute video of him just ruthlessly pummeling her. That video alone, he will never work in Hollywood again. But then again, Chris Brown beat up Rihanna and nobody cared.
Yeah, look how long R. Kelly was able to keep a very successful career when there was videos of him literally like dropping deuces and ones.
I know, yeah, right.
Underage children, and he was still being celebrity worshipped. Sorry, Ian, go ahead.
I think if the prosecution was going to do something, it would be cool, like if it was a movie script, if they set it up emotionally and then there's a lull where you're like, I don't think anything's going to happen. And then they drop the horror and you already hate this guy. And just that is how you emotionally trigger 12 people.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just playing on the emotions. And I think it's true for a lot of cases, because you can have cases that rely on more technical info to prove, someone's whereabouts or anything, and the jury will get bored. Emotions are really what keep people locked in, and you want them to be decided against him as early as possible. So when you have to go through, well, this is how they traveled, or even just weaker evidence, they are unlikely to change their mind.
Yeah, the optics of like an 8-month pregnant woman kind of testifying to all the horrible things that, Diddy allegedly did to her plays a role when it comes to deciding whether he's guilty or not, regardless if even the jury understands the charges or not. They're just going to be like, horrible person, her pregnant lady, good. But there's other people like Pearly Things that's coming out and saying, oh, she was going along with it. And she's going along and saying that, hey, why didn't she stop this when she was in a relationship with him for 9 years? Why didn't she, walk away from all this?
Yeah, she testified at one point. The prosecution asked her, like, was there a time that you enjoyed the freak offs? And she said, yeah, because at one point it was the only time I got one-on-one time with Diddy, who I was like obsessively in love with. And it's the kind of argument that I'm sure the prosecution, like, they asked her that on purpose because they didn't want the defense to be able to ask it, because it sounds weird to be like, you enjoyed this thing that you're now saying is abuse. Like, these are the kinds of he said, she said, gray areas that make or break a lot of cases. I think it's also interesting that, we are getting to hear testimony, but I've been following a couple of people who are in the courtroom reporting on this, and they are saying like Diddy apparently keeps like turning around and trying to make eye contact with like as many people as possible, like these sort of miniature stare downs. So there's a chance the jury is not just hearing the testimony and being swayed one way or the other, but also watching Diddy sit as the defendant and the way he's behaving. I mean, there's a reason that defense attorneys don't let their clients testify, but also coach them on how to behave while they're sitting there, because they're still in
he's reading a Bible.
The jury. They're doing anything.
Yeah, he's reading a Bible right now.
He's doing the OF Redemption tour.
Yeah. So, to Luke's point, there will be people, I think, who are like, I don't care what is said after this point, he's guilty. But you only need one juror to beat the charges. And to be, when she said that I enjoyed it, I thought that was her. Do you remember when Gage Grosskreutz or whatever, like accidentally admitted to pointing his gun at Kyle Rittenhouse on the stand? Like this big moment. I was watching it live. I'm like, oh, Kyle just won the lot. Kyle's in. Like when she said, yes, I enjoyed it, then that kind of negates almost everything after. Obviously not the beatings she took, but again, he's not on trial for that. So for her to come back now and say, so we have one victim.
Yeah. And Diddy's team is arguing that she was also abusive towards him, and that they were fighting and abusing each other mutually, and that this was an abusive relationship, and that this is not a court hearing about an abusive relationship. This is a court hearing about racketeering and conspiracy and trafficking.
Yeah. That's kind of the only way you can defend this, but that's the charges. So I don't know what people want him to do. It's just, do you think we're going to get any larger reveals of other Hollywood people, or is this just going to end up being just Diddy and his wife at this point?
Well, the behavior is cyclical, so over time you'll see rings of sexual deviancy. It's tough to gauge when the next one will happen. If there are multiple happening at once, concentric sex rings, super concentric sex circles.
Well, do you think that we're going to see any other names of people that were participating with Diddy? Because that was the sell, right? All of Hollywood was taking part in these freak-offs. That's what we were told. And right now, it's just him and his girlfriend and some prostitutes.
It's probably people being like, well, do we want to break the floodgates open?
Yeah. Yeah, what do you think, Hannah Clara? I kind of think no. I think we're going to get no names named. I think
you'll get nothing in court, and I think it's more interesting to see the social media sleuthing that's coming out. Like, as Diddy's name stays in the headlines and content creators are like, well, this is relevant and I want to talk about it. I have seen other people or other like minor celebrities start dropping like, oh, well, I saw Diddy with this girl, or I saw him over here at this time. Like, there's nothing necessarily super concrete, but in sort of the rumor mill is generating this web of people that he was associated with at various times. Like, it's more telling. And I think that in some ways, I know you've talked about this before, parallels Epstein. Like, we didn't get any names out of the Epstein cases, but you do get people who are like, well, here's this photo, or at that time he was meeting with this person, or kind of that anecdotal social evidence. It doesn't lead to charges, but we start to be aware of the circle these people were moving in.
Yeah, I want to see some big names here. I'm so disappointed. I want to see the Clintons. I want to see the Obamas. I want to see the Ashton Kutchers.
Don't you think, right? Luke, don't you think there's somebody else there?
There's a lot. But
come on.
But you're dealing with the Southern District of New York, which has a long history of covering up for Democrats and their crime here. They did it with Sam Bankman-Fried. They did it with Maxwell. They did it with Epstein. And this is a very highly corrupted office that was literally celebrating giving a bagpipe exit to the person that was forced to retire because he wouldn't hand over the Epstein files to Pam Bondi, right? And they're like, oh, no, why is he leaving?
He's one of the good ones.
Oh, no. He's such a and I'm like, that's the type of people you're dealing with. James Comey's daughter.
She's the prosecutor. Yeah. Or on the prosecution team.
All-female prosecution team. No offense, but like, listen. If you want a job done right,
well, it's not even that. It's like if it's all female, I mean,
and they
you just wonder
for the optics,
right? That's what I'm wondering.
Because Diddy's abusive towards women, but he's an undercover brother too, and he be getting down with some of the big names, according to all the like security guards he got there. I just sent you a video.
He was busting cheeks, like he was
clapping cheeks. He's probably clapping cheeks right now.